Ultimate Muscle Legends vs. New Generation was a small but noteworthy success for Aki, Bandai, and the GameCube. However, while the GameCube had its fair share of wrestling games, both exclusive and third party, would it really be fair to leave out the console that had the most success with wrestling games that generation? No, I don't think so. It wasn't until early 2004 when the first announcements about it were made. Bandai announced a slew of titles for early 2004 in Bandai Magazine. These included Lupin the Third, Treasure of the Sorcerer King, Ribbit King, Digimon Rumble Arena 2, Digimon World 4, Inuyasha the Secret of the Cursed Mask, SD Gundam Force, and today's game, Galactic Wrestling. The game was once again set to be developed by Aki, but it was not known if it would just be a port of Legends vs. New Generation or a whole new game altogether. The game was set for a summer 2004 release. Fast forward to March of 2004 and more information about the game came out. The game was set to feature much of the same as its GameCube equivalent, but there would be several changes. These included, but were not limited to, a bigger roster, a few gameplay improvements, improvement in arenas, many different modes, including a new one that would serve as a replacement for one from the previous game, and a change in graphics style. The game was revealed under its actual title of Galactic Wrestling featuring Ultimate Muscle in the build-up to E3 2004. I'm not sure what the thought process was for the title. Without that little side note on the box, you would assume this would be some kind of original generic wrestling game you'd find in the bargain bin for $5 or $8. No, that side note there makes you think it's more also or less some kind of crossover, I guess, featuring Ultimate Muscle characters, but indeed it was a full-bore Ultimate Muscle game. Let's just say fans who enjoyed the previous game, they were probably going to enjoy this one. Galactic Wrestling featuring Ultimate Muscle, known in Japan as Kinnikuman Generations, called Ultimate Muscle Generations on the title screen in North America, assumably that was the working title, was once again helmed by Aki and Bandai and released exclusively on the PS2 on April 22, 2004 for Japan and June 30, 2004 for North America. This actually means the game was ahead of schedule and was already out in Japan by the time E3 2004 rolled around. Galactic Wrestling does indeed feel like an expansion of the previous game. And while there are a couple of nice improvements and some new stuff to play around with, there are also a couple setbacks that may make it less enjoyable to those who especially loved Legends vs. New Generation. Galactic Wrestling has several modes of play like the previous game: Versus, Tournament, Team Battle, Survival, Spectator, and Toy Collection. Most of these modes are from the previous game, but Team Battle and Survival are new here. Versus mode can let you do free battles that can be single, with or without cornermen, Tag Team, Tornado Tag Team, and up to 4-player Battle Royale matches. You can play these also in multiplayer, and you can use a multi-tap for 4 players, so yay. Tournament mode returns and allows for single and tag tournaments. Unlike the last game where the mode didn't serve much of a purpose, other than maybe just building up actual coins, which can be done in other modes anyways, you'll actually need to compete in the mode as certain characters in order to unlock others. More on that towards the end. Team Battle mode is one of the new modes featured here, and it basically functions the same as Team Battle in the Tekken games. You'll set up your team, and you'll set up the opponent team, unlike Tekken. You fight until your character runs out of health, and then the next fighter comes in. Same goes for the opposite team. First team to eliminate the other team wins. You can even watch com versus com battles here. Speaking of which, you can also watch the computer battle it out in spectator mode. The same match types seen in versus mode are applied here. The new mode to replace story mode here is survival mode, where there are actually 2 modes within this type of game. There's your standard survival, where you keep fighting until you get knocked out, and then there's mask hunt mode. Now this mode is different from the normal survival mode since it only has one set of characters to play as: Neptune Man and Big Budo. The mode itself has you fight out a set of Tornado Tag Team matches. There are certain characters listed who have masks. When you get your opponent's health down enough, and both Neptune Man and Big Budo's special meters are both maxed out at the same time, you can perform their team finisher, Mask the End. Do this and you'll get the character's mask and end the match. After you collect the mask, you won't need to do it again on a second run unless you're going for a ranked run. The list of characters does include some unlockable characters, so make sure you unlock everyone before doing this mode, at least that you can. You'll probably want to beat the toy collector mode first to get one person unlocked in particular. Speaking of which, the last major mode in the game is the toy collection mode. Much like the last game, you'll earn kin medals by winning matches. You can then spend those medals in this mode on the various capsule machines to get the toys. There are more machines here than the previous game, and there's much more variety in the toys you can unlock as a result. You will need to get them, because certain thresholds, when met, can help unlock certain characters. Fortunately for returning players, this will be a mostly familiar task, and newcomers will not only grasp the idea, but earning things through gameplay. Speaking of which, Galactic Wrestling is very much similar to its predecessor. The object of the game pretty much remains the same as it ever was. You'll use a series of strikes and grapples in combination with each other to drain your opponent's health meter. Then, when the right amount is left, hit your finisher and KO them, or you can pin them. Yeah, that's one of the new few mechanics the gameplay has to offer. You can pin your opponent like a normal wrestling game. That's not the only other new addition. You can now perform ground grapples in the game. When your opponent is on the ground, press the grapple button. There are only front and background grapples. That's not really much of a surprise. This isn't like Day of Reckoning, which had a varied moveset. Still, ground grapples are a welcome addition, and both it and pinfalls do help root the game into more of its wrestling roots. You can also pick up opponents as well. There's another change here as well. In the upper corners of the health meter, you may notice a green meter. This meter fills with consistent attacks. When it's full, it activates muscle power. This temporarily gives your character a boost in strength and defense, and it can even open up some additional moves. Finally, the last change in the game is the special meter. The more you attack, the more it goes from empty to full, especially with consistent attacks. However, things can shift on a dime if you're not careful. This can lead to the power meter going down, and you'll have to rebuild it back up. Aside from that mechanic and a slight UI change from the normal meter to a flame appearance, it functions pretty much the same. In fact, that kind of sums up Galactic Wrestling to a T. Every mode that returns from the past game pretty much plays the same, despite some changes with the mechanics. Though one change could not be ignored: the controls. Going from GameCube to PS2, this gave the developer an extra shoulder button, 2 clickable analog sticks, and a different button layout to work with. Fortunately, they managed to translate the excellent controls from the previous game to here. L2 pins, R2 picks up the opponent, L1 triggers level 1 and level 2 specials, and using it with R1 will trigger a level 3 special depending on where the meter is. Triangle jumps, circle grapples, X attacks, and square guards. Right analog stick can let you tag/change target depending on the match. R3 is support action, L3 is power up/support action, and movement can be done with the D-pad/left analog stick. You actually have 2 ways to dash. You can hold guard plus the left analog stick, or tap the left analog stick twice in the direction you want to go. This is the only default layout, and there are several different configurations you can select from in the options menu. But for the most part, the default layout will be fine for many players. Everything is responsive as it should be and is kept the same. Still, there's no training mode. The graphics are another thing that underwent a bit of a change. Don't get me wrong, this is still not a bad looking game, far from it. But rather than the cel-shaded approach seen in Legends vs. New Generation, we get a more realistic looking style. This is reflected across the whole game, from character models, the stages, environments the stages are in, objects like rocks and metal poles, the ring, etc. While these elements are modeled well, with plenty of details for attire and muscle on the player characters, less edges across each of them, I thought the cel-shaded style fit very well with the first game. It doesn't quite pack the same punch when you see it done in a style that complements the action well. Anyways, that's not to say that Galactic Wrestling is a bad looking game, like I said. there are still plenty of other nice aesthetical changes. The facial animations are especially on point with the reactions on the player characters. You tend to see this when they get hit with both normal moves and especially when they get hit with special moves. You'll see the person hitting the move give a pumped up reaction or some other reaction that fits their personality, and the person getting hit with it will look petrified beyond belief. Though the commentators always seem to just stand there with their mouths of aghast. Same thing with Meat on the few times he shows up to drop a power-up. Another cool aesthetical touch, likely to make up for the lack of a story mode, is if certain characters face off in a match, both singles and tag, you can get a special introduction between the characters. This is similar to some pre-versus screens in Capcom vs. SNK 1 and 2. And while not a complete replacement for story mode, it does serve for a nice little bit of fan service. There are also other effects like a slam sound effect and other effects that do help to serve up to enhance the action. Think onomatopoeia, but without the words. So like when you slam someone down on the mat, you'll see like a little ripple effect and other cool things like that. That's not the only strong looking thing in Galactic Wrestling. Many of the animations that looked well in the previous game return here. They may seem recycled to some, but as I've said many times before, and probably will still say in the near future, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Even if some of these moves weren't just reused in the past game, not just that, but other Aki wrestling games as well. That approach worked as many of the moves still match the style of action seen in the show. They look well in game, and they are fun to pull off. The ground grapples are also well animated and especially fit the characters who use them quite a bit, like Terry Man. Though, without the cel-shaded style, they lack that extra oomph that really made them stand out in the first game. This especially hurts the characters that weren't featured in the previous game, in addition to moves not, so this is the only chance they get to shine here. While they all look fine, I don't see why it couldn't have been cel-shaded, especially since the game's frame rate rarely ever slows down. The stages, though, look nice enough. There's enough variety in them, though some of them have been recycled from the previous game. They are also modeled well and fit the atmosphere. Sadly, while the game does look fine on the whole, there are some things that don't look particularly impressive. The crowd, when viewed up close, while it looks better than some of the WWE games from that era, it still looks a gen behind, but this is only a small complaint. Some of it may seem like nitpicking, but I think I do prefer the previous game's style. But still, this is a good-looking game. Sound design for Galactic Wrestling also follows in the footsteps of its older brother. You'll likely hear many familiar sounds heard from the last game. Ring slam sounds, punches, bones breaking, all that good stuff. So many sounds from the last game appear here, and they work as they should, though repeated ones don't sound quite as impressive as they used to. Much of the music falls in line with its older brother. Many of the in-ring music follows the same ordeal as its predecessor. There are quite a few repeat tracks for the returning arenas, but new arenas have music that fits in with the previous tracks. Once again, more music from the anime is directly used in the Japanese version of the game. The Japanese theme for Kinnikuman Nisei, Hustle Muscle, is used in the menu music, and two of the classic Kinnikuman themes are used. Kinnikuman Go Fight is used in the intro, and Blazing Kinnikuman is used as the credits theme. Once again, the English version uses generic themes in place of these. These aren't bad, but having the actual music puts the Japanese version a step up. That's not the 4Kids way, though. Speaking of which, while the actual voice acting itself is fine, we are once again at the mercy of 4Kids trying to Americanize everything. Many of the changes here also came from the last game, so I won't repeat them here. Though I will mention they changed the ninja's name to Ninja Ned and gave him the background of just being an American who practices ninjutsu, as opposed to being an actual ninja from Japan. Come on, man, that's a step back. With more new characters comes new opportunities to do what 4Kids does best. Screw it up. I won't point them all out here because we'd be here all day, so any superfan who wants to do it in the comments, be my guest. Like the last game, between the unlockable characters and numerous toys to unlock, there's quite a bit of replayability. Though some characters are already unlocked in the Japanese version by default, more of them. while others aren't, mainly Ramen Man and Sunshine, though those two are unlocked in the US version by default. So yeah, despite that, there's still quite a bit to play around with. The more I look at this review, the more I feel like I'm trying to avoid sounding like a broken record in regards to Galactic Wrestling. This isn't necessarily the fault of the game itself. Like I said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That was the idea here, and it worked. Galactic Wrestling keeps everything that made the first game fun, adds some new modes to change things up a bit, and some tweaks in existing modes to keep veterans on their toes. It looks good, sounds good, plays good, controls well, and has plenty to keep you coming back. However, the art style change does seem off, removing story mode kinda sucks, Mask Hunt mode can be too tough for its own good, and the usual 4Kids-isms. Despite this, I can recommend this game, especially if you enjoyed the first one. You'll find pretty much of the same from Legends vs. New Generation here. And newcomers, well, if you didn't play the previous one, you can play this one first. And yeah. Sadly, while this is cheaper than Legends vs. New Generation, it has climbed in price. And this one wasn't even hidden gemmed by Metal Jesus Rocks, so too much of a hidden gem for him? Wow, and yet it still managed to go up. The retro market. What are you gonna do, ladies and gentlemen? CIB copies now go for about $76 as of writing this. You know what to do. Hell, PAL users are already ready to emulate since there was no PAL release. Either way, we really don't get ones like this anymore. I give Galactic Wrestling featuring Ultimate Muscle a 4 out of 5. I need a wrestling game break. But since I reviewed the other Ultimate Muscle, I figured it wouldn't be fair to leave this one off the table. So yeah, I'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, click the big red button below to subscribe. Check out the other links in the description for more cool stuff. And check out the playlist on screen for more content. See you in the next video.